So we're going to start in a seated position. In any comfortable seated position is fine. So just take a moment to settle in. Hi, Rush Dog. Feeling the parts of your body connected to the earth, feeling supported, feeling held up. Feeling that sense of stability in the legs and the hips. Okay, go on. And then move your awareness to your breath. And there's something that a teacher said to me long ago that kind of just stayed with me and continues to stay with me. He said, if the practice of yoga disappeared for centuries and we stopped practicing it, that we would relearn the postures. If we use the breath as our guide. So just what does it feel like? I invite you to kind of experience moving from the base of your pelvis that's being supported and using your breath to kind of work your way up each region of your spine, starting with the sacrum and working your way up your spine. Using your breath as a guide, notice what position you need to kind of adjust to feel just a smooth and even meaning you can feel it 3D, the front, the back, the sides. And you can feel it in each region evenly. And in doing this, we're not necessarily trying to make our breath bigger or breathe a perfect way. We're just kind of noticing, can I feel my breath in my right region of my upper side of my hip? Do I need to adjust my body? Do I need to adjust my awareness? How can I use my breath to create that sense of feeling nothing? And continuing to work your way up. Noticing those moments when you try to overthink things or over effort. Notice what happens to your mind when your mind goes to these places, and then notice what happens to your breath. Sometimes we can't feel the breath because we're overthinking it. As you work your way up, what are you starting to notice? Especially when you come into that region of your shoulders, the place that we're going to be focusing on today. The thoughts that enter your mind when we think of the right way to hold our shoulders. And all the instructions we've been given about how the shoulders should sit. And maybe take one of those cues that is most common to you and put that in your body now. So whatever cue you think you've been told, and maybe you're starting to notice things differently, but just take one of those cues and put it in your body and overly effort it. And then notice what happens to your breath. And then use that as a guide again. If we're looking for that sense of feeling nothing, is that what we need in our body at this moment? Because sometimes putting that cue in your body is a good thing. But if we sit in that cue all the time, how does that show up in our mind and how does that show up in our body? And as you work past the shoulders, moving up into the neck, what do you notice? And doing just one final scan from the crown of the head to the tip of the tailbone and all the parts of you, your spine, your ribs, your muscles, your organs. How can you create? How can you shift? How can you use your breath, your mind, and your body to create that sense of feeling nothing? So hopefully these next 5 cues are becoming very commonplace in your mind. But without moving into them, just notice, are you already there? Chin tucked, neck long, collarbones broad, lower ribs moving slightly inward and downward, front and back of the pelvis in relative neutral. So I had another client today saying to me, I don't know what this means, and trying really hard to find them. And sometimes I think our body just needs the opportunity to find them on our own, to feel that sense of ease, of lightness that happens when we use the breath and we use our own intuition to find that place of ease and softness. And start to bring your awareness to your shoulder blades. And just notice in this position where your shoulder blades naturally sit on the back of your rib cage. And what is probably pretty common is that you're going to feel that one feels different than the other. And instead of trying to correct it, or instead of trying to figure out why, just be, just notice, just breathe. So the collarbones, which are the part of that attaches to your sternum in the front, and the other part of it articulates with the shoulder blade, the scapula. It's one of the interesting, it doesn't articulate with the spine. However, this shoulder girdle can have a huge effect on the spine, especially the neck, but also, as Lisa felt last week, the obliques, the side body. And take the palms of your hands and place them on your knee and just lightly start to lift your shoulder blades up and down. And trying not to over effort, just kind of feeling more of the sense of gliding up and down on the back of your rib cage. And as you start to move up and down, just notice what you feel. We are going to feel differences, and we don't necessarily need to know why there's differences. I mean, we can probably start to think about, well, I use this arm, but we don't need to think. I want you to stay focused, stay present on what sensations you're actually feeling. And as you start to notice the difference, maybe you notice one that's a little hesitant, one that moves a little bit more naturally. So, whichever one you feel that maybe is moving a little less in sync with the way that it should be, and it doesn't matter if you're right or wrong, nothing you do is going to cause anything to go wrong. Just kind of go with your gut and choose the one that you feel is a little less in tune. And then let the other one go and just move the one that you feel a little disconnect to. And then notice what you feel. And the heart of this, or the real realization in this, is to go slow enough that you can stay present with the up and down. It's not the stop that we're looking at. It's the up and down that we're looking at. The next time you shrug up, stay up. So taking your shoulder up towards the ear on the same side. Then you're going to drop your ear towards that shoulder. So straight over to the side, you're not turning the head, you're taking the ear as if you could touch the ear to the top of the shoulder. And then if you have your eyes closed, open your eyes, start to look straight up towards the sky, and then allow the neck to follow. So the chin and the neck, nose are going straight up. So we're going into a contraction. Keeping your head where it is, now allow the shoulder blade to glide down your back. So staying very aware of the shoulder blade gliding down your back, and allow it to slightly roll or wrap forward. Now take your ear to the opposite shoulder. Take your nose straight down towards your chest. And then reach your fingertips of that hand over to the side and walk them slightly forward. So the ear is going straight over to the opposite shoulder, and the chin is going down towards the chest. We're not over efforting. We're more or less looking for that sense of creating a sense of nothingness, of ease. Walk your fingertips back and bring your hand back to your knee. Keep your head where it is. Lift the same shoulder up towards the ear, and then slightly take the shoulder blade towards your towards your spine. Then move your ear towards your shoulder that's lifted. Keeping the ear over the shoulder, gaze up, and nose goes straight up towards the sky. Notice what's happening on the other shoulder. We want to keep it as much in neutral, so that sense of nothingness as possible. Allow the shoulder blade to glide down the back, so really feel it glide down. Slightly wrap forward. Take the fingers out to the side. Take your ear to the opposite shoulder, and then the nose straight down towards the chest. Walk the fingers out. And as you're doing this, so we're going to do this 3 more times. I'll slightly talk you through it, but you can kind of do it on your own. As you're doing this, notice what happens to your breath. The head stays where it is as the shoulder lifts and draws back. Then the head goes second, ear to shoulder, chin and nose up. Drop the shoulder, head stays where it is, shoulder wraps slightly around, walk the fingers out, ear to the opposite shoulder, chin and nose down. Notice your breath. Walk the fingers back. Keep the head where it is. Lift the shoulder, glide it towards your shoulder blade. Ear to the same shoulder, gaze up. Drop the shoulder, wrap it forward, walk the fingers out. Ear to the opposite shoulder, gaze down. One more time on your own, really staying present of each individual movement. So you want to find each transition. So it's a step-by-step process. Once you get into each position, you hold it for maybe a count of 5, and then a step-by-step process for each other. Bring the hand back to your knee, lift your head. Switch the whatever way you have your legs. Then close your eyes and go back to that thing that we started with, which is just gliding the shoulders up and down your back. And now noticing if you've created more of a sink. So you have to move slow enough to notice. So we are going to do the other side, but we're going to do it a little less than we did our first side. Because in order to create balance, if we're unbalanced to begin with, if we do the same on both sides, then how do we create balance? So take your shoulders into neutral. We're going to do this one only 3 times. So lift the opposite shoulder that you lifted, take it towards your shoulder blade or spine, head towards the same shoulder, gaze up. Shoulder blade down your back, let the shoulder blade wrap on the outside of your rib cage, walk your fingers out, ear to the opposite shoulder, gaze down. Monitoring your breath. Do 2 more. Remember to stay connected to feeling the sense of the shoulder blade gliding. We want to create a sense of ease, a sense of being able to move through all the ranges of motion that the scapula goes through, which is up, down, and out and in, or elevation is lifting the shoulder blades up. Depression is taking them down. Retracting is retracting them towards the spine. And protraction is the opposite, wrapping them around. So when you finish, come back. Go up and down a few times just to see if you've created more of a sense of balance side to side. And then start to move the shoulder blades in circles. So arms hanging down by your side, and take your time. If you're still doing that pendulum, take your time. And then moving in the other direction. Okay. Come now onto your knees. And just to have a little bit more sense of those movements of your spine, I think I'm actually going to take my shirt off and come to where you can see me really closely. So take your block. Can you see my shoulder blades? I think so. Okay. Take your block and take it between your hands, like so. So make sure that the heels of your hands and your knuckles are on the block. You're just going to take it out in front of you. So like this. And hands wrist about shoulder with shoulder height. And don't think of taking your shoulders down your back. Just let them be in neutral. Let yourself feel that sense of nothingness. And then glide your shoulder blades towards your spine. So you can kind of see as I pull the block back towards my chest, my shoulder blades move towards my spine. That's retraction. And do the opposite. As if you're trying to not move your body, your torso, but you're trying to take the block to someone in front of you. So now your shoulder blades glide on the sides of your rib cage. So play with that back and forth between protraction, moving the shoulder blades on the outside of the rib cage, and then retraction towards the spine. You do want to have some sense of pressure on the block. But as you move, notice, does one side work a little bit better? Is it the same side that you just did the first thing with? And whichever side that is, we're going to take the block in that hand. So now, block out in front of you. Find your cues. Chin tuck, neck long, collarbones broad. There's a tendency to lose that broadness here. So try to keep that sense of that smile across the front of your collarbones. And then just do this side a little bit. Notice the tendency to over effort. Do you feel that sense of trying to, and it's not out to the side, Carla. Watch me, it's forward and back. As if you're passing it to someone in front of you, and then you're trying to take it away. We'll get to that action as well. Let it go. Roll. And then roll. So come back to it. Start from a sense of neutral, bringing your hands to your collarbones so you're not collapsing your collarbones. Take it forward, so protraction, and let it sit there for a second. Take it into retraction and let it sit there for a second. Which one is harder? Whichever one is harder, go there. We're going to take 5 breaths. So if it's harder to hold it by pushing it forward, stay in that. If it's harder to hold it and stay in retraction, stay there. And close your eyes and just monitor your breath. So noticing that when something is hard, our breath responds. And can you respond to that by trying to slow down the exhalations? Good. Let it go. Roll. All right. So again, we're not going to try to balance it out. So we're not going to do it as much. Just going to do it a few times, just to sense if we can have that sense. So if it helps to have your hand on your collarbone so you don't collapse, I find that helpful. More of the movement should come from the gliding of the shoulder blade, not the collapsing opening of the chest. So a few times back and forth, notice if one is easier or harder. For me, they're pretty neutral. So I'm just going to choose neutral and stay here. We're only going to do 3 breaths on this side. And let it go. Roll your shoulders. Simple, not easy, right? And then let's just go back and recheck. So go back to what we started with. And just do it a couple of times to notice, have you coordinated anything? Have you organized? Has that one side that seemed a little slow to connect reconnected a little bit? Good. Let it go. So notice that when you see me sitting here and I find my cues, chin tucked, neck long, collarbones broad. I like the sense of the smile because the smile is soft. So the edges of your collarbones are more like the corners of your smile and just this broadening across the front. Lower ribs down and in. Pelvis in relative neutral. And if I let my hands hang down by my side, can you see that my shoulders are naturally slightly rounded forward, right? So that brings my ear over my shoulder. Whereas if I do what I kind of have been doing for years, which is shoulder blades down my back and towards my spine, I'm now not finding that. So my rib cage is more of a support for my shoulder blades. So as we go into the next movement, keep that in mind. And I'm hoping you can see this. So I'm going to show you first, and I'm going to show you my tendency. So I'm starting with both hands on the floor, and it's just a simple side to side. But notice what's going on with my back. What I want to go is this, right? And notice what you see if I'm not aware of my rib cage being the support of my shoulder blades, opposed to I'm trying to keep my rib cage as kind of a table. Do you see the difference? Right? So come down to hands and knees. Shoulders underneath your wrist, knees underneath your hips. Press down through your hands, and as if you were lifting your rib cage into your shoulder blades. Now find your cues. Chin tucked, neck long, collarbones broad. You have a slight curve of your lower back. And then start to lift more of the rib cage into your shoulder blades. And then just gently rock side to side. Keeping your awareness more on the shoulder you've been working on. And notice what it wants to do. So when I rock to my right and my rib cage is pushing into my shoulder blade, I want to let go. So I really have to kind of lift the rib cage up into the middle edge of my shoulder blade to keep that connection. So you're keeping your awareness on your main shoulder. And then the next time you rock out to the right, stay to the right. Shift forward, so it's as if you're drawing a box with your shoulder around your hand. Shift towards the midline, and then shift back. So you're making a box around whatever arm, whatever wrist is the arm you've kind of been concentrating. And then notice what happens to your rib cage. So what do you need to do to organize to kind of keep the rib cage connected to your shoulder blade the whole time? Notice if you've lost your low back curve, which I did. It's totally arching my low back. Good. Let that go. Bring your arms forward. We don't need our block. Just see if moving back and forth between those two ranges is shifting at all. And take them down, glide them up and down, and notice again if you feel a little bit more connection to the disconnected side. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go away so now you can see where my hands are. We're going to make it a little harder. So same hand. You're going to take the hand and place that hand underneath your sternum so it's in the midline. You're going to place the other hand on top of it. So now you're making your base narrower. It's going to make the same movement a little harder. So just go a little side to side to connect to that first. You do want to feel a gliding of your shoulder blade on the rib cage, but the rib cage stays connected to it. And then start to make your little box. Notice where you lose it. Notice what part of your box, your body naturally drops away from your rib cage. Notice if you're starting to arch your or round your lower back in order to keep it, and instead take the rib cage, not rounding of the lower back. Good. Let that go. Roll. So when I started all this, I felt some clicking in my right shoulder. That to me is starting to dissipate, it's starting to go away. You may have felt some other sensations that are just starting to ease. Maybe they're still there. We can't fix everything in one day. So just to balance it out, we're just gonna do about 5 rotations with that one hand on the opposite side. So whichever hand you had on the top the last time, take that one on the bottom. Lift the rib cage into the shoulder blade. Broaden across the front of your collarbones and just take 5 box draws. And what I notice on this side is that it organizes, like it stays connected. I don't have to think about it as much. Sometimes we have things going on in both shoulders. Sometimes they're different. So you might not have the same experience as I do. And I've been doing this work for a while. So some of this I organize around better than you might initially. Good. Let it go. Release. All right. So we're going to take this now into a sun salutation of sorts. So hands on the floor. Broaden your base. Align the wrist crease with the front edge of your mat. Tuck the toes under. Press down. Lift your rib cage into your shoulder blades. Hover your knees off the floor. Find your lower back curve, but don't lose that connection of rib cage into the support of your shoulder blades. Find your cues, chin tucked, neck long, collarbones broad. We're still hovering the knees about an inch over the floor without collapsing the shoulders off the rib cage. Stay connected as you lift up and back into downward facing dog. Take a moment here just to disconnect and move. So we want to take those moments to break away and to stop overthinking. So just moving in a downward facing dog in a way that feels kind of not flowy, but whatever your body needs. And come back into neutral. Find the connection of the first finger and thumb to the floor, and then the heel of the hand underneath your pinky. Lift high up onto your toes. As you do, kind of round your rib cage into your shoulder blades, allowing the tops of your arm bones to kind of lift up and forward towards the front of your mat. Bend your knees, lift and spread your sit bones, keeping that lift in your upper arm, keeping that lift of your rib cage into your shoulder blades. So you find the lower back curve, straighten your knees, and then lower your heels towards the ground, only as far as you can go as you keep that connection. Then allow the crown of the head to fall towards the floor. Gaze between your heels. So we're finding the natural curve of our lower back, which is slightly concave. And we're finding the natural curve of our thoracic spine, which is naturally convex. So the thoracic spine, the part of the rib cage, is rounded, while the lower back is dipped. The crown of the head stretches towards the floor. Inhale, lift up onto your toes, gaze forward, shift your shoulder blades or your shoulder heads above your wrist and walk your feet forward. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, fold. Grab your opposite elbow and hang. Maybe even swinging a little side to side. And you may start to feel that connection as you swing side to side of where your external oblique kind of attaches almost to the edge of your armpit. Release the hands. Bring the hands to the shins, lift up halfway. We're gonna just stay here for a breath so we don't get dizzy when we come up. And then fingertips into your hip creases. Bring the lower rib cage in. Draw the elbows up towards the sky. So now we're going into retraction without pressing the ribs towards the floor. So keep the lower ribs in and then lift up. I'm gonna kneel down so you can see me. So we've kind of done some protraction and retraction. You stay standing. Arms over your head. As if you were reaching for something high over your sky. You stay standing, Carla. I'm just down so you can see me because I could see that my camera was in the wrong position. So reach up. So allow your shoulder blade to glide up and then take it down. So do the thing you're always told to do. Take your shoulder blades down your back and towards your spine. Tell me, how does that feel? Reach up. Take your shoulder blades down your back and towards your spine. Where can you breathe more easily? Reach up. Where can you find your cues? So going between one and the other. Monitor what feels better in your body. And maybe you're different than me, but for me, the opposite of what I've been told my whole life, which is draw my shoulders down my back and towards my spine, even when my arms over my head, feels really uncomfortable. So I'm going to choose to stretch my arms up. Bring the palms of your hands together over your head. Interlace your thumbs together so they keep it. Interlace all of your fingers together except for the first finger. Reach through your first fingers and try to touch the pinky edges of your hands together. And reach this whole inner arm up. Good. Draw the chin towards your throat. Gaze up towards your thumbs. Keep reaching outer armpits up towards your pinky. Exhale, release your hands and fold. Inhale, lift your rib cage into your shoulder blades as you come up halfway. Exhale, fold. Inhale, reach up, stretch up, arms come over your head. Touch the pinky edges of your hands first. Interlace your fingers except for the first finger and thumb. Lift. Keep your lower ribs in, gaze up. Exhale, hands move through heart center. Touch your elbows together and fold. Inhale, lift your rib cage into your shoulder blades as you come up halfway. Exhale, fold. Inhale, palms up, reach arms over the head. Pinky edges of the hands together first. Interlace the fingers. Reach first finger, thumb up towards the sky. Gaze up, keep reaching inner arms up, lower ribs stay down. Keep the palms together. Bring hands through heart, elbows touch. So you're feeling that rounding of your back. Keep your elbows touching as you fold. Hips move back. Fold forward. One more time. Inhale, halfway lift. Lift your shoulder blades or your rib cage into your shoulder blades. Exhale, fold. Rotate your palms up. Reach your arms over your head. Pinky edges together first. Interlace. Point up. Look up. Arch back. Keep the hands together. Hands move through heart center as elbows come together. Push your thoracic spine back. So rounding, hinge from your hips, fold.
Inhale, halfway. Exhale, fold. Again, grab the opposite elbow with your hand, whichever way you went through first, switch to bring the other forearm underneath. Reach the crown of the head towards the floor. Shift your hips back in space so that your navel kind of rests above the tops of your feet, not your toes. Rock a little side to side. As you rock to one side, lift the other elbow up and over. So you're kind of creating a twist towards the posterior side, the back side. And again, notice, can you feel that connection of where the muscle, it creates the twist, kind of extends all the way up into your outer armpit, that whole area that we just kind of focused on. Let it go. Come up halfway. Bend your knees and step into tabletop. Spread your fingers wide. Press down through the ball mount of your first finger, the ball mount of your thumb, and then also the ball mount, the heel of the hand underneath your pinky finger. Find protraction, so shoulder blades wrap on the outside of your rib cage. Finding the lumbar spine in neutral, which means it's the slight low back curve. And then lift the bottom of your rib cage up and in to find neutral in the thoracic spine, which is somewhat rounded. So we moved into the thoracic spine last week. We're going to move from the shoulder blades this time. So hands on the floor, we're going to find protraction and retraction first. So keeping your spine where it is, all your cues, chin tuck, neck long, collarbones broad. Take your shoulder blades towards your spine. Don't move the rounding of your spine or the shape of your spine, and then push shoulder blades on the outside of your rib cage. So going between protraction and retraction. Notice if you're trying to move from your spine, and keep instead the movement in your shoulder blades. So feeling the gliding on the sides of the rib cage, and then on the back of the rib cage towards the spine. Resisting the urge to let the thoracic spine drop when we go into that retraction. So continue to try to keep the rounding of the thoracic spine. It's hard, I know. Come back into neutral. Tuck the toes under, hover the knees, and maintain that, it's called bear. So knees are hovering about an inch off the floor. We're keeping the natural curve of the low back, natural curve of the mid back. We're more of in a state of protraction in the shoulders. Lift the hips up and back, coming into downward facing dog. Come high up on the toes, firm the front of the thighs, press them back, lift and spread your sit bones. Find your natural curve of your low back. So that is that dip. And then find the natural curve of your thoracic spine. So moving the rib cage into your shoulders. For tops of the arm bones, move forward slightly. Then shift your hips back to drop the head between your arms, gaze between your feet. Maybe your heels come to the floor. Push into your hands. Glide your shoulder blades towards your ears and then down your back. So now we're doing that elevation, pushing into the floor, shoulder blades glide towards ears and down. Notice the tendency to try to take this into the spine, try to maintain neutral curves in your mid spine and low back. So we have the stability, we're supporting ourselves in a loaded position. Notice what shows up. Can you come back to that sense of when we were drawing that box around our wrist and adjusting our rib cage to keep that rib cage connected to your scapula, your shoulder blade? Good. Inhale, shift forward back to plank. Drop your knees to the floor, toes point back. Push down, find neutral. Elbows point towards your hips. Try to maintain this awareness of shoulder blade and rib as you bend the elbows and lower your body down to the floor. Walk the heels of the hands in line with the bottom of the rib cage. Elbows shoulder width apart. So they're not squeezing in towards the ribs. They're shoulder width apart. Chin tuck, neck long. Lift your back body into your shoulder blades as you lift your head and your chest. Then move shoulder blades down in space slightly to lift your collarbones towards your chin. Press the hands into the floor, lift up through hands and knees, come back to child's pose. And allow the arms to stretch forward as your elbows release to the floor. And something that is very common as we're doing this very, very specific work to the shoulder blades is you might feel numbness and tingling. If it persists, back off. Sometimes when we start to move in a different way, this is kind of a transitional thing and it happens. But, you know, that is also something that kind of dictates that nerves are involved. So just lighten up. Don't be too effortful. You can kind of move your neck side to side and walk your hands forward. As you shift forward back to tabletop, kind of come with a sense of lifting the ribs into the shoulder blades, tuck the toes under, move back into downward facing dog with awareness. Inhale, lift up onto your toes, shoulders shift above your wrists, look between your thumbs. Find stability. That's what we've been doing. Bend your knees, step and hop to the front of your mat, step or hop. Inhale, lift. Exhale, fold. Inhale, palms turn out as you lift up. Connect, pinky edges, fingers point up, thumbs point up, look up, arch back. Exhale, keep hands together as you bring elbows together, hands move through heart, hands down beside your body. Rotate the palms out. Notice your tendency to over effort that shoulders down and back and resist that. Just allow the rotation to come from the arm bone rotating in the socket, not the shoulders moving. Keep that awareness, arms come over your head, pinky edges match first, fingers interlace, look up, arch back. Exhale, elbows come together as you hinge forward, forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, fold, hands to the floor. Step back into plank pose. We're gonna do the same thing that we just did in tabletop and plank pose. If you need to go to tabletop, go to tabletop. Reach to the crown of the head, find your cues. Your cues are gonna keep you stable. Find the connection, thumb, first finger, heel of the hand underneath the pinky. Press down. Can you find that same awareness of shoulder blades gliding with the spine staying stable? So chin is tucked. You're not moving from your neck. The chin is not jutting forward. It's all the shoulder blades gliding out and gliding in. Just a couple of more times. Again, if you lose any of your cues, it means you need to be doing this on hands and knees. Lift up and back into downward facing dog. We're gonna amp this up a bit, or you can stay where you are. If it felt really good the last time, walk your feet mat distance apart. Come onto the arm you've been working on. Bring more awareness to pressing down. Lift up onto your toes, find your low back curve, and then lift the back of your rib cage to find your thoracic rib cage. Lift and spread as you lower your heels to the ground. Press that hand a little bit more into the ground and take maybe your other hand off and bring it on your hip. and then slide down and slide up. Notice when you lose the connection to your rib cage, and then stay in the opposite connection. Can you maintain all your cues? Find neutral and take 2 breaths. Switch, bring the other hand down. Find neutral, so kind of come back to where both hands are on the ground. Low back curve, mid back curve, shoulder blades, tops of the heads of the humerus, so the tops of the arm bones lift slightly, and then gaze between your feet. Find the connection of your other rib cage to your scapula, shoulder blade, and then lift the other arm off. Do just a couple of those elevation and depression of your shoulder blade. And if there's pain, just don't do it. Just hold, or maybe even keep the other hand down and just bring more awareness to this arm. And take 1 breath. And then release both hands down. Walk your feet in. Shift forward to plank, shoulders above your wrist. Move rib cage to support your scapula. Elbows turn back, find your cues. Chin tucked, neck long, collarbones broad. Fronts and backs of your pelvis in neutral. Elbows draw down. Can you keep your shoulder blades in neutral as you lower slowly to the ground in chaturanga? Forehead to the floor. Heels of the hands in line with the bottom of the rib cage. Start with your shoulder blades in neutral. Start to lift the sternum off the floor, and then lifting up into cobra with awareness of your thoracic spine. Lower down. Press up through hands and knees and back into child's pose. This time, rest with your hands down beside your shins, fingers resting on the bottoms of your feet. Breathe. So what I always find is interesting is that shoulder work makes me breathe better. Doesn't necessarily mean it'll have the same connection to you, but I have discovered that my external oblique on my right side is a huge contributing factor to a lot of issues I have going on. Shift up. Shift forward to hands and knees. Cross your right leg in front of your left. Set your feet wide and then sit your hips between your heels. Bring your left arm forward. Cross your right elbow underneath your left and bring the fingertips into the palms of your hand. Press your hands together as you lift your elbows shoulder height. And move your rib cage back into your shoulder blades. Find your cues, chin tucked, neck long, collarbones broad, so we're not collapsing the front of the chest. Lower ribs down and in. Pelvis relatively neutral. Round all the way through your thoracic spine first, so the rib cage first, and then allowing yourself to move deeper if you can. Neck relaxes. And lift up. Bring the hands behind your back, fingertips to the floor. Move your shoulder blades
down, but do it more from the lift of your sternum than trying to over effort. So lift your heart. Lean back, switch your legs. Right arm comes on top, left arm crosses underneath, left fingertips in the palm of your right hand. Move your elbows to shoulder height and then glide the shoulders forward, or better yet, puff the rib cage back into your shoulder blades. And then lift the top of the sternum towards your chin. Chin in, neck longs, lower ribs down and in. Breathe. And then finally rounding, coming into more of that sense of flexion in your mid back, maybe even moving into the low back. And lift back up, hands behind your back, fingertips to the floor. Lift your sternum to feel the shoulder blades naturally move down your back, creating a sense of a shelf to lift your heart. Lift up. We're gonna end where we started. So hands resting on our knees. Moving back into the space of your breath. Go back into kind of rediscovering your body with your breath. Where do you feel the breath move with ease? Where can the breath move to create more space, more awareness? How do you need to shift to find a sense of space, which is maybe a better word than nothingness, although I do like the idea of feeling nothing, because usually when I feel something, it is the opposite of how I want to feel. And when you come into that space, of presence, where you're able to be fully present, notice your mind. Notice your breath. And what do you notice about your body?